Have you ever wondered what it would be like to stumble upon a miracle at sea? To witness an act of heroism that defies all odds? This is the extraordinary tale of an unlikely duo who did just that. The morning sun spilled across the horizon, turning the sea into a sheet of molten gold. A weathered boat bobbed gently on the tide, its wooden hull creaking with every sway. At the helm sat Thomas Hale, a fisherman well past 70, his face marked by the wrinkles of years spent beneath salt and wind. His hair had thinned to a silver crown, but his eyes still glimmered with the sharpness of youth. At his feet rested Max, a golden retriever with a coat as radiant as the dawn. Max was more than a companion. Since Thomas's wife had passed, the dog had been his shadow, his confidant, and the quiet heartbeat beside him on long, lonely days at sea. That morning, as gulls wheeled overhead and the line dipped lazily into the deep, Thomas hummed an old sailor's tune. Max stood at the bow, ears perked, nose twitching against the salty air. Suddenly, he stiffened, his body tensed, tail straight. He barked once, sharp and urgent, eyes fixed on something thrashing in the water. Thomas turned, squinting. At first, he thought it was a log caught in the current. But then he saw small white paws flailing, a flash of striped fur, and heard a thin, desperate cry. His heart lurched. "Max!" he shouted, but the dog was already moving. In one graceful leap, Max plunged into the water. The sea closed over him with a splash. Thomas's hands gripped the railing until his knuckles whitened. "Come on, boy, please." Through the waves, Max paddled with powerful strokes. The creature struggling in the current was unlike anything Thomas had ever seen. At first, he thought it was a strange white cat. But as Max reached it, jaws gently gripping the loose scruff, Thomas caught sight of faint black stripes across the wet, pale fur. His breath caught. By the time Max dragged the small body back to the boat, Thomas was leaning dangerously over the side, arms stretched. Together, man and dog hauled the sodden bundle aboard. It lay trembling on the deck, coughing up seawater, tiny claws scraping weakly against the planks. And there, unmistakable, even to Thomas's weathered eyes, was the truth. A white tiger cub. For a long moment, Thomas could only stare. White tigers were legends, whispered of in books and wildlife programs, creatures of rare beauty and rarity. And here on his battered fishing boat lay one no bigger than a house cat, its fur ghostly, its eyes pale blue and glazed with exhaustion. Max whined softly, licking the cub's face, nudging it to breathe. The cub let out a weak cry, then slumped against the retriever's warm body. "Good boy," Thomas murmured, voice shaking. His hands trembled as he wrapped the cub in his spare jacket. He checked the shoreline. They were far from any zoo or sanctuary. Somehow, this cub had found its way to the ocean and nearly perished. Thomas's heart pounded. He knew what he had to do. With trembling fingers, he reached for the radio. "Coastal Rescue, this is Hale," he said, his voice cracked. I found an animal in distress. A tiger cub. Yes, you heard right. A white tiger cub. Send authorities. This is urgent." There was silence on the line, then a burst of static. "What?" "Repeat." "Hale, did you say tiger cub?" "I did," Thomas insisted. His voice steadied. "It's alive, but weak. A dog pulled it from the sea. Hurry." As he waited for a response, Thomas crouched beside Max and the cub. Max had curled around it protectively, his golden fur drying the cub's sodden coat. The two looked like opposites, one bred for companionship, the other born of wilderness, but in that moment they were bound by something deeper. Within an hour, a patrol boat appeared on the horizon, slicing through the waves. Wildlife officers climbed aboard Thomas's vessel, their faces registering shock when they saw the tiny tiger nestled against the golden retriever.
One knelt,
Carefully lifting the cub into a thermal blanket. "Incredible," he whispered. "This is one of the rarest animals in the world. Must have been stolen, transported illegally, and somehow escaped. This cub is a symbol of conservation efforts globally." Thomas stood aside, pride swelling in his chest. Max barked once, as if urging them to handle the cub gently. The news spread like wildfire. By evening, headlines flashed across television screens. "Fishermen and dog rescue, rare white tiger cub at sea." Reporters swarmed the docks. Photographers captured Max sitting proudly beside Thomas, tail wagging, as officials cradled the rescued cub. Once the humble fisherman and his loyal dog were thrust into a spotlight neither had ever sought. But behind the cameras, the truth was simpler. Max had leaped without hesitation, and Thomas had chosen compassion over disbelief. Days later, the tiger cub named Luna, by the rescue team, was stabilized at a conservation center. Specialists confirmed her genetic rarity. White tigers, once thought nearly extinct, were symbols of resilience. Luna's survival meant hope. Thomas and Max were invited to the sanctuary. When they entered, Luna padded toward them, still wobbly but stronger, her pale fur glowing in the filtered light. She sniffed Max, then pressed her small head against his chest in recognition. Max's tail wagged furiously, and he gave her a gentle lick. Thomas felt tears blur his vision. At a ceremony soon after, local authorities presented Thomas and Max with medals of recognition. The mayor shook Thomas's hand firmly. "In saving this cub, you've done more than rescue one life. You've safeguarded a symbol of global conservation." And Max. He bent down to clip a medal onto the dog's collar. "Max is a hero." The crowd erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Max wagged his tail, tongue lolling happily, unaware of the magnitude of his actions. Thomas, however, felt the weight of it deeply. He thought of his late wife, how she always said Max had a heart larger than the sea itself. She had been right. In the months that followed, Luna grew under the sanctuary's care, her once fragile body filling with strength. She became the face of a campaign against wildlife trafficking, her story of survival spreading across continents. Children painted her image on posters. Conservationists raised funds in her name. And always, in the background of those stories, is the image of a golden dog and an old fisherman, the unlikely guardians who had pulled her back from the brink. Thomas returned to his boat, to his quiet life of tides and nets. Yet sometimes, when the sun painted the sea gold, he would pause at the bow, Max by his side. Remember the day the ocean delivered him a miracle. He would smile, ruffle Max's ears, and whisper, "We did good, boy. Did real good."